Hello, this is Catherine Dubberly, the Answer Lady. I'm a big fan of Kiss Looms. I greatly enjoy mine, and I am cooperating with Kelly at Kiss Looms to make you a playlist of all the basic techniques that you might ever want to know on all of the looms. So welcome and enjoy.
Now this edge needs to be hung on the loom. This is a Tunisian crochet hook. The difference between it and a regular crochet hook is simply that it has a longer shaft and a knob on the end so the stitches can't fall off. And I have sometimes used these to cast on when hand knitting, and I think we ought to try it. I want to go right next to the outer column of stitches. There we go. So I'm going to pull up a loop there, and this will be a stitch I can put on the loom. And I'm going to make the first 3 stitches along the first 3 rows. And see that row? Time to skip one. 4, 2 together, skip one. That's the one I'll skip. 2 together, skip one. 2 together, skip one. How many stitches have we got? We need 14 and we have 11. So I can skip one. 12, 13, 14. That's the same thing that I meant to do last time by hanging directly on the loom. But there are a couple of advantages, at least I think so. We'll soon see when I try to hang it. I can get all these stitches evened out on this Tunisian crochet hook and then transferred to the pegs, and I can double check that they are in the correct line. I will need to withdraw this hook from 1 stitch at a time, and if it's too difficult I have another plan, which would be to put the stitches on a circular needle before moving them to the loom. But I think this is going to work okay. Make sure they're not twisted. I'm not going to get too upset about it now because I can examine them before we start knitting. Okay, just wanted to make sure I have it right, double checking. Purl side to the back. That means the knit side, if I pulled everything through, would be there. And it is. Let's withdraw that hook some more. This is considerably easier. Plus, I think it's going to result in a neater, more uniform edge. And it's hanging on the loom very nicely, just straight from the Tunisian hook. Now, what if you don't have a Tunisian hook? Well, you see, we didn't take up nearly anywhere all of the length. So you could just put a rubber band around the non-hook end of a regular crochet hook to create a stopper and get pretty much the same effect. And 2 more. Of course, the end stitch will grow until I stop it because it has unsecured loose yarn end down in there. Now what have we got? We've got the join to this square. It'll be knitted this direction, and as we knit, these stitches will be joined along this peg. And you have seen that done before, so I'm just going to start it and do a little bit and then finish it off camera. Working yarn, stitches to hang. Remember the rhythm that we always use. For 2 rows, we hang a stitch from the holder. For 1 row, we knit without hanging. And this is method 1, where I knit off 13 stitches and then hang. But there's method 2, where you go ahead and hang the needed stitch at the beginning of the row, whichever works for you. Or you can alternate them, which I find myself doing. And the thing is, when you're knitting from the opposite end of the row to the stitch, that gives the stitch extra opportunities to fall off. So you might not want to do it at the very beginning. But when you're knitting it at the very beginning of the row, it'll be trapped. So you may want to use method 1 for rows like this one, and method 2 for rows going the opposite direction. And here we go, row 2. Then row 3, I won't add a stitch at all, and we'll all keep going like that until we've got 20 rows of this square knitted. Just about to knit row 20 of square 5, and I've discovered a trick. After a while, your stitch holder gets in the way, and you wish it was gone, and you only have a couple more stitches. Hang them on the next pins or pegs over if you're setting up your loom like I am. And then you can get the stitch holders out of the way a little bit sooner. Well, I'm always going to alternate so that the gray is being knitted that way and the red's being knitted that way, so they appear to be interwoven. So far, I've learned that I really like this method of picking up these edge stitches better than I like trying to hang them directly on the loom. And I have learned that if I had been smart, even though I'm only going to use 14 pegs, if I wanted to use the whole loom framework for stability, I would have used my longer sides. That would have given me more room when I'm putting my tools in there. But it's going pretty well. Breaking news, there are 3 wrong ways to hang these loops on the loom. How do I know this? I just used all 3. Again, I did a good job making this nice neat row of loops with my Tunisian crochet hook. I'm very pleased with that method. But you do have to make sure that you hang them on the loom correctly, which I did not do. A couple of things I should tell you. By the way, now I think they're on correctly. This does count as the first row of knitting. Therefore, I need to immediately hang the stitch from the stitch holder. These stitches will be seamed up this direction as I knit. And I tried something new that doesn't pan out, so I'm going to show it to you so you don't bother. I thought I might keep this stitch from growing by knotting a loop into it. It does keep the stitch from growing, but the knot pulls right through the fabric, so I think that's wasted effort, and I'll need to secure it with the old-fashioned method. Let's make sure I've got the working yarn, and we're ready to wrap. I will see you, this is row 2, and I'll see you after row 20 has been knitted and all of those stitches on the stitch holder have been hung. I've been counting very carefully to share this with you. When you use a Tunisian crochet hook or regular crochet hook to make the first row of stitches and knit them through the fabric off of the loom but then hang them on the loom, it slightly changes the way that you want to pace the hanging of stitches up the side of the work. In that case, hang the first row that you've worked through with the Tunisian hook. Hang a stitch from the side on top of it. And additionally, hang stitches on the side of the next 3 rows. So for the total of the first 4 that you actually work, hang stitches. Then go to hanging 1 for 2 rows and skipping a row. I just completed square 6, and it's time to bind it off because I'm only doing 3 each direction and I'm at the end of one direction. So any bind off will work for me because I'm going to be making this into a pillow cover. The decision is firm now, and therefore these edges will be in seams, and it won't matter whether they match or don't match because they're going to be hidden. And they're not going to match because, as you know, wherever I cast on, I used the Quickie E-Wrap cast on, which makes a loopy edge, and this makes a chain stitched edge. But we'll get this off and then have a look at what's next. And while I work, I'll tell you what I've learned to date. First of all, I've quit following Ruth's diagram. Her diagram is fine, but finally the whole process got stuck in my head properly, and now it's clear to me what should come next, and I don't need to refer to a diagram. If it happened to me, that'll probably happen to you. So struggle through the first few squares, and then the patterning will begin to sink in, and it won't be a struggle. That's happy news, I think. Obviously, I could keep making this as large as I wanted. Ruth made an enormous blanket. My goals are more modest for this demonstration, so I can stop at any time. And as soon as I get this 6th piece off, we'll look at what comes next. And by the way, my pieces may no longer match numerically with Ruth's diagram because I'm now numbering them in my mind based on when I knitted them, not on where they appear on the diagram that I am no longer consulting. So that's a good starting place, but you will learn what's going on here and just be able to proceed. Break the yarn, pull the last stitch through, and now it's safe to take it off the loom. Oh, another thing, I no longer need the other pieces of loom to make this stable. There's enough fabric to do it, so I can get it out of the way for demo purposes, which is nice. Here's where we are. This was piece number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for me. Now I need 3 more pieces. And what I told you is going to be obvious to you now. You can see what you need to do. You need to pick up the edge of this piece. I'm doing it with my Tunisian crochet hook, and knit it this direction and bind off up here. Then the side of that piece will run up there. We'll pick it up on the Tunisian crochet hook hanging on the loom. These stitches are still open, so we'll be knitting. Let's see, let me review here. This will be a red piece. This will be a gray piece running this direction, picking up edge stitches on the end peg of the loom as we go. Then we'll take these stitches off onto a stitch holder. We'll pick up these stitches using my Tunisian crochet hook or hanging them on the loom if that works fine for you. It didn't in this yarn on this loom at this gauge for me. So I'll pick these up and hang them on the loom. There will be stitches on a holder up here. I'll knit this direction, picking these up one at a time onto the end peg of the loom. And now you can see how you could just keep going. I could even come back over here and change my mind and make it 4 stitches. 4 squares. I said stitches, I meant squares. If I wanted to do that, I would use the Tunisian crochet hook and pick these up so as to hang on the loom and knit a gray square this direction. Take the end stitches off on a stitch holder. And of course, I shouldn't have bound off this edge if I wanted to do that, but I could always just undo the bind off, put these stitches on stitch holders, pick up stitches on this non-existent imaginary square to hang on the loom, and knit this direction. It becomes very, very clear, and I have to say, Ruth's method is more intuitive than the one that starts with triangles. It's easier to get it cemented in your mind. I do think the product is slightly different, but still very, very nice, and not as hard on the brain.